Welcome to North 40 News and New Scenes, NOCO Now. We are live with episode 8, Are Mountain Lions in Urban Areas a Growing Problem? Today's broadcast is brought to you by Keep NOCO Open. Go to NOCOrecovers.com to see the latest businesses certified to level up. And we're in officially that yellow dial. So those certified businesses can apply to go into yellow, and that's really exciting, and we're excited about making sure people are aware of that. Our broadcast today is also brought to you by Mountain View Historic Hotel and Cafe in Centennial, Wyoming. Enter now to win 2 nights lodging and 2 lift tickets at north40news.com/ski trip. Each week, we discuss Northern Colorado's most important topics, bringing guests to our show and encouraging questions from our audience and on our website and social media. Be sure to send us your question either by email at nnn@north40news.com or on our social media pages on Facebook or YouTube. I'm Blaine Howerton, publisher of North 40 News and New Scene magazine, and with me today is Stephen Bonifazi, staff journalist. Hey, Stephen. Here we are again. Who do we have with us today?
Hey, Blaine. So today we have with us Aran, Meyer, and Jason Clay. Aran is a wildlife ecologist for the City of Fort Collins Natural Areas Department and has worked at the department for 13 years. Prior to that, he was involved in research with the Rocky Mountain Research Station and has also worked for the Natural Heritage Program, tracking rare and endangered species in the state of Louisiana. Jason is a Colorado native and a public information officer for the Northeast region of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, getting educational messages to the public, answering media inquiries, and publicizing the work that takes place within the agency for the last 3 years. Jason, Aran, how you guys doing today?
Doing well. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Nice to join you guys.
Well, thank you for joining us. Yeah, we really appreciate your time. And Aran, I'd like to start with you. I wanted to ask you, is a mountain lion sighting in Fort Collins an unusual thing? And how often would you say it happens?
I would say it's not necessarily unusual. The species is cryptic and inconspicuous kind of just by nature. So I think that lions probably use the Poudre River and as a passage to kind of move through the urban environment. So it's kind of hard to say how often it happens because of the cryptic nature of the species. But there are these kind of like intermittent observations. I live right here by Lee Martinez Park. There's been mountain lion sightings down here and in other areas along the Poudre River. What's nice about the Fort Collins community is that most of the land along the Poudre River is public space, public land. And so I think that, because the species also disperses long distances, males especially, that the Poudre River is used as like a corridor. And as far as, ecology is concerned, the meaning of corridor is it's like a spatial area, a geographic area that species use to complete their life history. So in most cases, I imagine it's individuals that are looking for habitat and unoccupied areas of, that aren't being currently used by mountain lions. So I think it probably happens more often than we're aware of. And I almost wonder, just because of, at least at the natural areas, we know during the pandemic that people have really been using our properties because there aren't the other social opportunities that we're used to. So you have more human eyes on the ground to kind of make those observations than maybe typically. So I guess just in summary, I'd say it's probably more common than we actually know. And they're active crepuscularly and nocturnally, so they're also moving when humans are not as active as well. So
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense.
So, Jason, why do you think mountain lions and other wildlife such as bull elk are coming into the more rural areas now? Would you consider areas like Bellevue, LaPorte, and Western Loveland areas where there maybe has been more recent activity?
I wouldn't consider that unusual. Like kind of Aran was getting into, mountain lions have They do utilize that urban exurban interface a lot for prey resources. Really, anywhere where you have deer, you could have mountain lions. That's their primary food source, but it's not their only one. They'll eat prey on small items, raccoons, skunks. They take pets and livestock. It's kind of along their food chain. Getting into a little bit, following up on kind of more people out on the landscape or mountain lions being sighted more often. Another thing too that makes them more visible these days is technology. So many people have the security cameras around their homes or in their backyards or trail cameras, and so we're able to detect them on the landscape at night, like we were just talking. Whereas a lot of times in the past, maybe they went undetected. So that's one aspect of it. And going into the elk. The elk that you see that come down into Loveland really are migrating down from kind of the Estes area, and you get some really strong numbers that go in there. I think one herd hangs out really strongly by the Carter Lake area, but you have a couple herds that number into the several hundreds, 600 to 800 ahead. So you get some large group of elks that come down to winter at a little bit lower elevation.
Okay, yeah, I think I get what you're going at there. Aran, could the Cameron Peak wildfire of last year have anything to do with this recent sighting? And are wild animals still dealing with that displacement from the natural disaster?
I'm not totally sure about the correlation between the fire and some of these sightings. I think this is a really good opportunity to do some kind of public education just on wildfires and wildlife response, because I think sometimes the fires, the overall maybe perception is like destruction, and that can happen. If it's really high intensity fire, you get like soil sterilization, hydrophobic soils, and erosion events and such, and those are not positive attitude. But what was really neat is that when the fire burned, it burned really far east at the kind of tail end of things, and it burned Bobcat Ridge, which is a city property. And we had a bunch of trail cameras up. This kind of gets at that technology piece that Jason was just talking about. But we had all these trail cameras. And when the fire came through Bobcat Ridge, that's a ponderosa pine forest. And ponderosa pine forests generally, historically, have had these low intensity fires that kind of burn the understory and clear things out and don't really become crown fires and whatnot. And if it's like too packed or dog hair stands, that will happen. But anyways, we had these cameras where you can actually, where we had it set for video, so you can see the fire coming through. And in a couple cases, we have some video of this fire coming through, and there's elk just grazing at the same time. There's a fire happening, and they don't seem to be bothered at all. And then at another location, we have a camera on a little water hole, because obviously that's going to be a place that a lot of wildlife are attracted. And the fire comes through, low intensity, and then soon thereafter there was coyote and deer and elk. So and I know that one of the big game biologists had some elk collar data on how they were responding in the upper watershed too. I meant to check that out before this interview, but I didn't have the chance to. So it's not always like a destructive kind of like wildlife or displaced kind of thing. These species have evolved with fire for hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years. So I'm not sure if they're totally correlated. I'm sure there has been some displacement, but at least as far as like the fire that happened on Bobcat Ridge, we were really pleased with it, because I don't think we could have done a prescribed fire that would have been as beneficial as the fire that came through. So there's probably some of that, but I wouldn't say that they're probably totally correlated.
Okay.
So, Aran, would you say it's common to see a mountain lion in the Fort Collins area, or how often would you say that seems to be happening?
I'm not totally sure about the frequency. Just because I think these animals are in our presence just a lot more than we're even aware of. And so the recent sighting is related to the Environmental Learning Center. And if you were to get on Google Maps or Google Earth and you look at that area spatially, so you have the ELC, then you have a bunch of city-owned property, and relative to that urban wildland interface on the eastern side of the city, not right up against the foothills, it's a pretty decent swath of land that's not developed and more contiguous. There is some fragmentation. Even on the north side of Prospect, you have riverbend ponds. And I was out checking a bald eagle nest on, today's Thursday, so maybe Tuesday night. There's a bald eagle nest right by the box elder sanitation plant. I was checking it, and that's that same area as the ELC. And I saw at least 30 white-tailed deer out there. And when I saw that, and I was thinking about this show, and I'm like, well, of course, this totally makes sense that there could be a mountain lion, kind of holding down right now in this area, because for wildlife, it's just a day-to-day life. Try to find food as often as you can and be successful. So if there's this prey base and there's some space for you to exist, then why not, kind of hunker down for a little while until you get pushed out by another individual, or move on to find a better territory or whatever. So I'm not sure how frequent it is, but I would guess it's probably more frequent than we realize. So,
well, since it's so more frequent than we probably know, Jason, what should someone do if they encounter a mountain lion or other potentially dangerous wild animals?
Yeah, the biggest thing they can do is stay calm, do not run. You want to face that animal, and you want to talk firmly to it. You could, if it's a bear or mountain lion, those are the things. Do not run from it. But you can make yourself look bigger. You could throw your arms up over your head if you have kids with you. You want to pick them up. You can put them on your shoulders again, that aspect to make them look bigger. But you also don't want your kids to, you want to try to keep them calm as well, so they're not screaming. Back away from the animal, do it in a safe manner, and give that animal space. A lot of times, more often than not, they'll identify what you are and they will go away on their own. If it's a bear or mountain lion or a coyote or whatever, if they do approach, you want to continue to stand your ground, but continue to maybe talk to it, see if you can get it go along. If you need to, try to throw something at that animal to get it to go away. You want to do so without trying necessarily to have to bend over to pick up, say, a rock, because again, you want to make yourself look bigger and not going down on the ground, make yourself look smaller. And in the rare instance, if it does happen, if you were to be attacked, you need to fight back with everything that you got. Some things that you can do, maybe as you go, if you're hiking out on the trail, go with a buddy. Don't have earbuds in both ears so you can be aware of your surroundings, and make noise as you go. A lot of times wildlife will detect us as humans well in advance before we see them, and more often than not they get out of the way and you never know that there was an animal by the trail where you were going. So the more noise that you make as you go along is beneficial for you as well. And if it's an instance where maybe you have these animals around your home, you want to haze them away. If you have a bear, a mountain lion around your home, make loud noises, blow an air horn, set off the car alarm, just something to try to get that animal to go away so it's not comfortable right in your backyard.
The noise problem for me is not a problem. I have an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. I just always have to apologize to the other hikers.
Yeah.
Hey, Aran, what are some strategies that you and the City of Fort Collins Natural Areas Department are working on to conserve, protect, and sustain the management of wildlife and their habitats?
I would say kind of like at a coarser level of things, our department is just focused on supporting, ecological function and integrity. So I would kind of define that as, we want to be in a more supportive role and not, real hands-on, like what are the processes that the landscape kind of uses or are a part of the landscape that support the species that occur there or should or could occur there. So a lot of what we do is collect baseline or inventory data to understand what is occurring on the property and what is not there. So data that tells you what is absent is just as valuable as what is there. And so based upon that information and the needs that a species or guild of species, suite of species needs to complete their life history, we're just trying to understand those components and then provide those, kind of like just set the stage for things. So we have a staff biologist, Crystal Strauss, and a vegetation management specialist, Ryan Vincent. And so the three of us are always out gathering data, and then we bring our data together and then, kind of look at that, analyze it, and make recommendations to upper management. They make decisions, and then it kind of funnels back down, and we implement things on the ground. So a lot of the things that we have been doing is trying to, where there's space and room, is reconnect the Poudre River to its floodplain. And then we've been doing a lot of grassland restoration with a goal of supporting a lot of grassland species that were absent on these properties. A lot of properties that we buy around the periphery of the city are agricultural properties. So a lot of them have been like in winter wheat production. And then we try to return them to conditions that are similar to the historic grasslands that were here prior to the land use type, and then monitor to see what wildlife species are showing up afterwards. And so I've done a lot of breeding bird surveys. I work with Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, which is a local nonprofit here in town, and they're a big partner and collaborator that we work with, a bunch of smart folks and great biologists over there. So we are just trying to keep our pulse on what's going on and how do we support things that are on the ground, and what do they need habitat wise, and if they're not occurring and should be, then what do we need to do to put those elements in place? So I'd say it's a summary of what we're doing primarily.
And Jason, same question to you. What has Colorado Parks and Wildlife been doing to mitigate instances such as this?
Well, we do a lot of work to protect habitats, conserve habitats. The big focus in the state right now is your wildlife winter ranges and migration corridors. So there are some big studies that are going on now, and even within the last, I guess it's been maybe 2 weeks now, we recently were putting some GPS collars on deer in the Lerma County area to kind of understand the movement patterns of them. But there is a big focus on protecting the spaces that our wildlife need and the habitats that are out there.
Hey, Jason, what would you recommend, or who would you recommend that the general public should call if they see a mountain lion, a bear, or another dangerous animal in an area where they think there might be a safety concern?
Yeah, if there's a safety concern, with a bear or a mountain lion, they should call Colorado Parks and Wildlife right away. They can call our office in Fort Collins if it's during your normal business hours. If it's outside of business hours, we tell people, and it's an urgent matter, that is, we tell people to call Colorado State Patrol, because we always have an on-call wildlife officer, someone that can respond to any incident, and we are dispatched through CSP. So that number for CSP is 303-239-4501. But it's important that we know about these instances, and what our wildlife officers want to know about is the behavior of the animal, maybe the size and color, particularly if it's a bear, because bears can be multicolored. They can be brown, black, cinnamon, browns. So but what was the behavior? Where was it at? Maybe where that animal was moving. That's really important for our wildlife officers to know, so they can get out there and locate and determine the plan of action. They'll assess the situation and move forward from there. So yeah, thank you for throwing some numbers up on there. But those, if it's a bear or mountain lion, it's really important to know, and it's important that we track the data too. Maybe it's not always an exact safety issue, but you have a bear that's coming through and is getting into your bird feeder in your backyard, or has been getting at trash cans in your neighborhood. And we collect all that data, and it helps us to have a pulse of what's going on in the community, and how we could work with the communities maybe to mitigate conflicts, and also to remove attractants. That's a big thing, is not having attractants out that can lure these animals in.
Sure, absolutely. And so I want to ask you both, what can people do? And I think, Jason, you kind of touched on this a little bit before, but what can people do on their own properties to deter dangerous wildlife?
Oh, I was just, well, Jason just hit on that with the attractants. And, so some of these, apex predators, they're more focused on their prey than they are humans. And every once in a while, there's this interaction with humans, and it's pretty scary because these animals are powerful and can inflict some damage. But in most cases, so when I was just out at running to your natural area, I saw all those white-tailed deer, and I was just like, there's so much prey out here that I don't think there's a lot for people to worry about. I think just the most important thing is just be situationally aware, So if you see a mountain lion or a bear, just employing all those techniques that Jason talked about, don't try not to be perceived as threatening, back away, just give the animal space so that it can get out of there. Because in most cases, it wants to just move on. So I think in most cases, we're in the presence of these animals a lot of times and don't even know it, and things go just fine. They're more focused on what is familiar and their kind of more natural prey. So I was reflecting on that earlier this week when I was out. I saw all those white-tailed deer. I'm just like, well, this mountain lion is probably stoked out here, and it's not what people are doing. But there is some stuff with like attractants that I think, when you draw in the prey and you bring them close to you, then whatever those means, maybe some of your landscaping, and Jason might have some more ideas about this, but definitely, bird feeders can attract bears, suet feeders and things like that, which it's nice to view that wildlife, but there's like a secondary impact that I think folks just need to consider. So I might hand that over to Jason for some more.
Yeah, the bird feeders are a big one. People love being able to draw in the birds so that they can watch them, but they're a magnet for bears. It's easy calories. A bear's job is to bears by their nature are really very lazy. They want to spend the least amount of effort to get the most calories that they can. And if it's a bird feeder, if it's trash, they can begin to rely on humans as a crutch to get the calories that they need instead of their natural food sources. So and it's not just trash and bird feeders too, don't have your pet food outside, keep your garages closed, something as simple as that. For bears and mountain lions, if you have livestock, you need to protect them. Chicken coops are a big thing, and those need to be fortified with electric fencing, because we get instances all the time where chicken coops are raided by bears. Mountain lions will go after a lot of the other livestock, your sheep and goats. So you need to protect them and your pets as well. You need to, if you are leaving your pets out overnight, make sure that they are in a secured kennel. And if they're out during the day, you need to watch them as they come and go. We've heard all the stories, I don't need to worry about my dog. I have a Rottweiler, this and that. Nothing will match up with a mountain lion, and we've responded to those calls. So live appropriately with wildlife in mind, and make sure that your neighborhood is as well, because if I'm doing everything right, I'm not harboring places that maybe a bear could come in, but my neighbor is, then the conflicts are going to persist in the area. With mountain lions, again, haze them away if you do see them. And remember that if you have strong deer populations where you live, you're very likely to have mountain lions. So we do encourage people to haze deer away so they're not hanging out right where you live.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for your time. We had a few questions come in kind of at the last minute, and one of them actually was kind of an interesting thing that I really hadn't thought about for this broadcast. So I wanted to ask if either one of you are working with more of the indigenous population and people, who've lived here for thousands of years or in the area, just to kind of get an idea for maybe some ideas or ways that people today can work with animals and keeping their safety in mind. Any ideas there?
Yeah, well, with CPW, we do like to work with many different constituents and groups. And if there are people that want to get involved, probably the best place to start with is your local CPW office if you want to reach out to us. And then I know our folks, your local wildlife officers are going to be your best resource for your area. And you can get to know them and get to work with them in ways you can help. And same thing with offices. If there's ways you want to be involved or you want to get on CPW's radar, then give us a call, and that'll be a good conversation to have.
That's great. Thank you, Jason. Another part of Amber's question was how can we live with nature? And I think that's such an important part of, I'm a small property owner, and I'm always trying to live with nature, and teach my kids how to do that as much as possible, rather than scare them away, and not necessarily encourage. I don't want to encourage the bears to come and, hang out near my, campsite or whatever, but certainly, don't mind them being there because they belong there. So thank you, Amber, for your comments, and we appreciate your thoughts there in living with nature. So anything else that the two of you would like to say before we wrap things up?
I think maybe just on our hand real quick, we do have a lot of resources on our website that you can go to, whether it's what to do if you encounter a mountain lion, a bear, how to protect wildlife, habitats. We have a whole section on living with wildlife that has some of the different species. So I encourage people to visit there and utilize the resources that we have online.
Okay, well, wonderful. Thank you both for your time. I always try to end our broadcast to let people know that North 40 News is a locally owned independent newspaper and news service, and we're always trying to make sure people understand that all of this work costs us money, lots of money. So we encourage people to subscribe to us, support us through their subscription and readership. And you can do that at north40news.com/subscribe. We've got a bunch of different options for different levels of support, anywhere from a few dollars a month to about $80 a year for a full year subscription. So that being said, I want to say thank you again to Aran and Jason and you as well, Stephen, for putting everything together. And I'm going to sign off for now and sign us out for now. And thanks for watching.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.